It was the kind of October rain that didn't just fall, it whispered. Whispered through the broken branches, whispered across the windshield like it knew something Richard didn't. The black Mercedes glided slowly through the gate, tires crunching against gravel that hadn't been disturbed in years. Weeds clawed at the edges of the drive. A faded wooden sign dangled by a rusted chain. The paint was long gone, but someone had once carved the word Rivera into it. Richard Whitmore killed the engine and stepped out. The rain didn't pause for him. He didn't flinch either. Years of boardrooms battles and billion-dollar decisions had made him immune to discomfort, or so he thought. He stood there perfectly still as water soaked his wool coat and ran down the back of his neck. He was 53, rugged, sharp eyes, a man who'd built towers from dust and turned swamps into skylines. His empire stretched across states. People called him ruthless. Precise. Some even said heartless. And maybe they were right. But even Richard had moments of silence. Moments like this one, when something just felt off. Not wrong, not threatening, just unsettling, as if the air itself had a memory. He looked around. The farmhouse was a skeleton, peeling paint shutters barely hanging on. The porch creaked under its own weight, and an old swing banged softly in the wind like a ticking clock. But Richard didn't see ruin. He saw opportunity. "This land," he muttered under his breath, "is perfect. Not for living, not for saving, but for clearing, for leveling, to make way for his next legacy." What he didn't realize was that beneath the mud, the weeds, and the silence, this land was about to dig him up instead. Because fate doesn't always knock on the front door. Sometimes it waits on a broken porch with a necklace around a stranger's neck and the past breathing down your collar. She stepped out of the barn like a shadow unraveling at dawn, boots crunching the gravel, hair tied loosely back, sun-kissed and untamed. A young woman, no older than her mid-20s, carrying a clipboard and the kind of confidence that didn't come from money, but from earth, from labor, from knowing every inch of land she walked. Richard turned toward her voice, and then he froze. Not because of her face, not her eyes. Not even the way she looked at him like he was just another stranger trying to make an offer, but because of what hung around her neck. It glinted under the October sky, a delicate gold chain with an emerald teardrop surrounded by tiny rose-shaped carvings in silver. Elegant, unmistakable. His breath caught. No, it couldn't be. That necklace was one of a kind, custom designed. He'd sketched it himself on a napkin in Paris, had it made by hand for a woman he was going to marry. Anna Caldwell, a woman who vanished 29 years ago, the day before their wedding. The necklace shouldn't exist. And yet, it was right there, on the chest of this young woman who now stood only feet away, eyes narrowed, trying to read the stranger's silence. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was steady, kind but guarded. Richard blinked as if shaking off ghosts. I'm Richard Whitmore. I was told this land was up for sale." She nodded slowly. "I'm Emily. This land belongs to my mother, but I manage it now." He stared at her. Emily. The name sounded like thunder muffled beneath a memory. And that necklace, it screamed louder than anything. Richard's world began to tilt. For a few seconds, Richard said nothing, just stared. His eyes locked on the necklace like it had just whispered his name. Emily shifted uncomfortable. She had met land developers before, all business, all numbers. But this man looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Then he spoke. Slow, cold, too careful. "Where did you get that necklace?" Emily froze. Not because of the question, but how he asked it. Like she had stolen something sacred. Like the answer would either kill him or save him. "I didn't buy it," she said cautiously. "It was my mother's. It's the only thing she gave me before she got sick." Richard blinked. Your mother? He echoed. Is she Anna Caldwell? Emily furrowed her brow. No, her name's not Anna. Her name is Ruth Rivera. But Richard's face had already gone pale. The name Anna still echoed in his mind like thunder on a mountaintop. The night she disappeared. The day he never stopped asking why. Now, for the first time in 29 years, he had a lead, and it was staring at him with her mother's eyes. That night, sleep didn't come. Emily tossed, turned. Her mind raced with the man's voice, cold, broken, and shaken by a necklace. Where did you get that necklace? Why had he asked that? Why did he say Anna like it mattered more than air? Unable to silence the storm in her chest, Emily got out of bed. The farmhouse was still, silent except for the ticking of the old wall clock and the distant cry of wind scratching at the window panes. She climbed the attic stairs barefoot, her flashlight barely cutting through the dust-drenched darkness. At the top, she paused. The trunk, covered in cobwebs, latched shut, hidden behind stacked boxes and yellowing quilts. Grandma Gloria's voice echoed in her memory. Stern warning. There are things you shouldn't touch, Emily. Some boxes carry memories too heavy for the young to bear. But tonight, Emily wasn't just young. She was desperate. Hands trembling, she unlatched the trunk. Inside, a velvet pouch, a man's ring with initials R.W., a bundle of letters, and a journal, a leather-bound journal tied with faded ribbon. She picked it up slowly, heart pounding. The cover read in delicate handwriting, Anna Caldwell. May this help me remember who I was. Emily's breath caught. This wasn't just a box, it was a door, and once opened, it would never close again. The journal smelled like cedar and thyme. Emily turned the brittle pages carefully. Some were blank, others had small sketches of wildflowers, notes on farm chores, grocery lists. But then, April 3rd, 1994. Her mother's handwriting was still beautiful, still alive, still trembling in some places. Richard brought me lilacs today, again. He said they reminded him of me, strong and sweet even in the coldest months. Emily smiled faintly. He knelt by the lake today, said he wanted to build a home with me here. Said love shouldn't have to bow to bloodlines or banks. He gave me the necklace. And then, a line drawn with a shaking hand, darker ink pressed deeper into the page. Something's wrong. Charles made a threat. I don't feel safe. If anything happens, I need someone to believe I didn't leave willingly. I love Richard. I always will. Emily's hands trembled. Her mother had been in love, had been engaged, had been scared, and someone Charles had known. The silence of 3 decades suddenly became deafening. The ring was small, but it felt heavy in Emily's palm, not because of the gold, because of what it meant. Tucked in the bottom of the box, wrapped in faded silk, was the ring, a classic design, vintage, elegant, and unmistakably crafted with love. And under it, an old, crumpled newspaper clipping. The headline made her blood run cold. Whitmore air search for missing fiancé, April 1995. Richard Whitmore, son of real estate magnate Harrison Whitmore, offers $500,000 for information regarding the disappearance of his fiancée Anna Caldwell, who vanished 1 week before their wedding. Emily read it again and again. Fiancé, disappearance, 1 week before the wedding. Her mother didn't walk away, she was taken. The necklace, the journal, the name Anna Caldwell. It wasn't a coincidence. It was her mother's truth. And suddenly, everything clicked. Emily staggered backward, heart pounding. Anna Caldwell is my mother, and Richard Whitmore is my father. The room spun. Her hands gripped the edge of the attic box like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her life had always felt off, like a puzzle missing one central piece. Now the piece had a name, and the man she'd met yesterday was not just a wealthy stranger. He was the other half of a tragedy that stole decades. He was family. The sky outside was gray heavy with unshed rain. Inside the old kitchen, the clock ticked with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each second sounding louder than the last. Emily sat across from her mother. Anna stirred her tea slowly, absently, like her hands remembered rituals her mind had long forgotten. Emily's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, do you remember someone named Richard?" The spoon paused, then resumed. Silence fell like mist. Emily studied her mother's face. The soft creases around her eyes, the way her lips pressed together when she was trying to think. There was something shifting like a ripple under still water. Anna didn't look up, but then she spoke. "That name, it used to mean something. I remember warmth and music." Her voice cracked on the last word. Emily leaned in, heart pounding. "Music," Anna closed her eyes. "A melody with no words. He used to hum it every time he touched my hand." Then a tear escaped down her cheek, slow and quiet, as if memory was tiptoeing back home one hesitant step at a time. The mirror was old, a little cracked at the corner. Like her, Anna stood in front of it alone. She reached up and touched her cheek, then her lips, then the line between her eyebrows. The woman in the glass stared back, eyes wide, uncertain. Anna blinked once, then again, but the stranger remained. I don't know this face." She touched the faint scar near her hairline. "I've worn this skin for decades, but I don't remember how I got here." Her hands began to shake. Tears welled up. She turned to Emily, her voice rising, cracking. "Who am I? What was my name before?" The silence. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she stepped forward, arms trembling, and whispered, "You were Anna Caldwell. You were loved." Anna sank to her knees, sobbing, not just from grief, but from the terrifying realization she had been erased. The rain was relentless. It hammered the roof of Emily's truck like 1,000 tiny fists, each one pounding louder than her heart. She stared at the phone in her hand. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Just one name, just one number, Richard Whitmore. She closed her eyes. She saw the necklace, the letters. Her mother shattered and searching for a past she couldn't remember. And suddenly, there was no choice left. Emily hit call. It rang and rang. Then, "Hello?" His voice, calm, controlled. But Emily didn't hesitate. "I found letters," she said, voice quiet but unshakable. "I know who you are." Silence. On the other end, the steering wheel slipped from Richard's grip. His knuckles turned white, his chest tightened. The rain outside blurred into streaks of panic across the windshield. He whispered, "Where are you?" Emily's voice cracked. "Home, with her, with Anna." Richard didn't think. He turned the wheel so hard the tires screamed. He didn't care about the road, the storm, the $1,000,000 meetings he was skipping. He had a daughter. And somewhere in that storm, the silence of 29 years shattered. The door creaked open. Emily held her breath as Richard stepped in. He wasn't the mogul from the news, not the sharp-suited, sharp-tongued tycoon. He looked lost, like a man arriving at a dream too painful to believe. Across the room, Anna sat by the window, blank eyes watching the clouds swirl. The music therapy tape still played softly, a melody from 1994. She turned slowly when she heard the footsteps. Something in her body flinched. Their eyes met. Time cracked. Richard took a trembling step forward. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Anna's lips parted, barely a whisper. "Why does your voice make my chest hurt?" Richard collapsed into the nearest chair. His hands covered his face. The storm outside howled, but inside there was only the sound of breath held back and a love that refused to die. The room was filled with beeping monitors. Dr. Steinberg looked grave as he slid the scan across the table. There's a tear in her mitral valve, scar tissue from the accident. If we don't operate, she'll be gone within the year. Richard's breath caught in his throat. And if you do? The doctor didn't flinch. There's a 30% chance her heart won't make it through. Silence. Outside, the wind howled. Emily sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand, still cold but alive. "She deserves a chance," Emily whispered. "She's fought too long in the dark." Steinberg nodded, but it must be her decision. And Anna still didn't remember her past. The risk wasn't just surgical. It was emotional collapse, memory flooding, trauma reborn. So they started small. Soft music, old letters, and the doctor's voice calm, rhythmic, like a metronome of time trying to stitch itself back. Richard stayed close, every day, every minute, waiting, praying, hoping that the woman he loved would come back. Before her heart gave out, trying. The gramophone crackled softly in the corner of the room. Dust shimmered in the afternoon light. Then that first note, that first trembling piano chord. "Fly me to the moon." Anna flinched. Her eyes darted toward the speaker. Her breath caught. Something inside her shifted. Not pain, not fear, but a trembling recognition. Emily, sitting by her mother's bedside, leaned in. "Do you know this song?" Anna's voice was barely a whisper. Someone used to sing this to me." She closed her eyes, and suddenly she saw a man in a suit, a small jazz club, a slow dance. Laughter, his voice, his cologne, that night under the stars. Her lips trembled. "Richard!" Across the room, Richard froze. Tears filled his eyes. He hadn't heard his name from her lips in 29 years. Anna opened her eyes slowly, confused, but not afraid. "I remember dancing." Emily covered her mouth. Steinberg smiled quietly. It had begun. The heart was healing, and the soul was finally remembering its home. The rain. That's the first thing Anna remembers. Not a whisper, not a face, but the sound of rain. Relentless, cold. It had soaked through her dress that night. And then, hands, rough, pulling, muffled screaming. 2 men in black, a white van, no license plate, a syringe, panic. Richard. She had just left his apartment. She was going to surprise him with a love letter. She never made it. "No, stop, please, I'm pregnant." Then pain, a blow to the back of her head. The world turned sideways. The rain turned red. Darkness. Later in the hospital, the smell of bleach, bandages, no memory. A doctor whispering to a nurse, "Davenport said she's to stay off-grid, say nothing." Davenport, that name hits her like lightning now. Anna gasps aloud in the present. Richard stands up, eyes wide. "What did you say?" Anna trembling. "Charles Davenport? He knew. He orchestrated it. He wanted me gone." Richard turns pale. Emily grips his hand. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Richard Whitmore stepped out onto the 43rd floor of the Davenport Group. Tailored suit, tight jaw. In his breast pocket, a discreet recorder already running. Receptionist, "Do you have an appointment with Senator Davenport?" Richard didn't answer. He walked straight past her. The mahogany doors opened. Charles Davenport was standing by the window sipping brandy, city skyline glittering behind him. He turned, smiled. "Whitmore, still dramatic, I see." Richard didn't return the smile. He walked in slowly, closed the door. "We need to talk about Anna." Charles's expression didn't flinch, but the twitch in his eye betrayed him. "Anna?" Richard pulled a photo from his coat pocket. Anna, pregnant, smiling, 29 years ago. Charles chuckled, swirling his drink. You came all this way for ghosts? Richard's voice dropped, cold, controlled. I remember the van, the men, the threats, the lies. Charles shrugged. You can't prove anything. Click. Richard reached into his jacket, pulled out the recorder. That's enough. He hit stop. Charles's face went pale. What are you doing? Richard stepped closer. What I should have done 29 years ago. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, politicians, and champagne. Charles Davenport stood at the podium, all charm, all lies. He raised his glass. To legacy, to power, and to the future we're building together. Polite applause. Then the doors opened. Silence dropped like thunder. Anna Caldwell, in a deep blue dress, thin but standing, alive. Charles dropped his glass. Behind her, Richard. Behind him, Emily. And then, FBI agents entered. One flipped a badge, the other pulled a file. Emily stepped forward, voice steady but shaking with fury. You tried to kill my mother. I was in her womb when you did. Gasps, flashes, cameras, screams. Charles stumbled back. That's insane. There's no proof. Richard pressed play on the recorder. Charles's voice echoed across the ballroom. You can't prove anything. The silence after was lethal. The lead FBI agent turned. Mr. Davenport, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and attempted murder. Click. Cuffs. Anna didn't flinch. Emily didn't blink. Charles, he didn't speak. Because guilt doesn't need words. The rose garden bloomed again just like it did 3 decades ago. Only this time, the petals bore witness to something even more miraculous than their rebirth. A love that survived betrayal, memory loss, and time itself. Emily adjusted her lavender dress, holding the bouquet tightly. Across the garden, guests gathered quietly, many of them unaware of the 29 years of pain behind this simple ceremony. And then she appeared, Anna, in a modest white dress, no veil, no glitter. Just grace, just truth, just strength. As she walked toward the arched gate covered in soft pink roses, she met his eyes. Richard, waiting, crying, but smiling through every tear. She paused only once to touch a faded wooden sign half covered in ivy. It read, Anna and Richard's Garden, 1994. Her fingers trembled, but her voice was calm. I remember planting these roses with you. He reached for her hand, and I remember praying I'd see this day. Even when I didn't believe it was possible. Emily stepped beside them, her presence a living symbol of the past's injustice and the future's redemption. As the minister spoke, no one blinked. Even the wind held its breath. And when they finally said, I do, it wasn't just a vow. It was a promise that time would never steal them again. The garden fell silent as the minister nodded gently, stepping back. Now it was just the two of them. Richard took her hands in his. He looked older now, but his love hadn't aged a day. His voice cracked. Anna, I once wrote vows I never got to say. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed, worn, but intact. He smiled through his tears. I have done, and I always will. I loved you yesterday. I love you today, and I will love you even in lifetimes that don't know your name. Anna covered her mouth, tears spilling over. She stepped closer, pressing her forehead against his. You waited for me, she whispered. He nodded, slowly, steadily, and then she spoke the words she didn't know she had memorized in her soul. I choose you after everything. I choose you with the broken years, with the silence, with the scars that made us. A hush swept through the crowd. Some cried, some smiled, but everyone believed in love again. The applause faded. The music softened, but in the middle of that rose garden, time stood still. Emily stepped forward in her soft lavender dress, clutching the pendant that started it all. She looked at them not as strangers of a broken past, but as the pieces that had finally found their way back to her. Her voice cracked. She smiled, eyes shimmering. "I love you both." Anna gasped. Richard froze. And then the three of them stepped into one another's arms. No words, just trembling shoulders, tears on cheeks, heartbeats finding rhythm. The crowd rose to their feet in silence, as if witnessing something sacred, not just a family being formed, but a wound finally closing. It had been 6 months since the wedding. The roses still bloomed in the garden where Anna had said, "I choose you." But something else was blooming too, something bigger. Emily stood by the window of the old farmhouse. In her hands, a blueprint, a dream, and a purpose. Richard walked in holding coffee. Anna followed her steps, still careful, but her eyes stronger than ever. Emily turned, eyes shining. "I want to turn this place into a healing center for daughters who never got answers, for mothers who were silenced, for families broken by secrets." Silence filled the room. Then Anna, with trembling lips, whispered, "You want to turn our pain into hope?" Emily nodded. "I want to name it Anna's Place, so no one forgets the woman who was stolen but never lost, who was broken but never gave up." The grand opening of Anna's Place wasn't marked by a red carpet. It was marked by silence, soil, and rose petals. Emily stood in the center of the old field, now transformed into a garden of memory. Behind her, dozens of women and children, survivors just like Anna, held small rose stems in their hands. Anna held Richard's arm. She was thinner, a little fragile, but her spirit unshakable. Emily raised her voice steady but full of feeling. "Today, we plant roses, not just for remembrance, but for rebirth, for mothers who were silenced, for daughters who were dismissed, for love that was lost and found again." They began planting. Each rose was a name. Each name was a story. Some whispered, some wept, but all stood together. Anna knelt beside Emily, gently covering a rose's roots, then looked up and whispered, "This is what healing looks like." Richard placed a plaque near the center, engraved in both wood and truth, "Anna's Place, where broken things bloom again." As the last rays of the afternoon sun filtered softly through the blooming roses, Anna stood quietly amidst the garden, the same garden she and Richard had dreamed of all those years ago. Her silver-streaked hair caught the light like strands of hope woven through time, and the delicate lines on her face told stories of pain, endurance, and finally peace. She looked around at the faces of those she loved most, her daughter Emily, whose strength had been the bridge to healing, and Richard, the man who never gave up searching, never stopped believing in their love. Taking a slow, steady breath, Anna's eyes filled with a warmth that transcended the years of silence. Then, with a quiet yet unwavering voice, she spoke words that seemed to hold the weight of a lifetime. "I don't regret anything anymore. Because if even one day had been different, if I had taken another path or said no to fate's cruel hand, I might never have had this moment right here, this family, this love, these second chances that make life worth living." Her words hung in the air, a delicate thread, connecting the past to the present, a testament to resilience and the unbreakable bonds forged by love and forgiveness. Richard reached out his fingers, gently intertwining with hers, grounding her in the here and now. Emily stepped forward, tears streaming quietly down her face as she embraced them both, a perfect circle of healing, of belonging, and of hope renewed. Around them, the roses swayed in the soft breeze, their fragrant petals a symbol of beauty born from pain. And as the garden whispered its quiet blessings, it was clear this was not the end. It was a new beginning. Pain, loss, and silence had shaped their journey, but love had been the true healer. Love had waited patiently, waiting for the day it could come home. And home was here, in this garden, with this family under the open sky. What this story teaches us about life. Life often tests us with unexpected losses, silence, and long years of waiting. But the greatest strength lies not in avoiding pain, but in embracing hope, forgiveness, and the courage to rebuild. True love transcends time, mistakes, and misunderstandings. It waits patiently for us to find our way back to ourselves, to each other, and to healing. No matter how broken or lost you feel, there is always a chance to start anew, to reclaim your story, and to create a family built on love, trust, and resilience. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Through Her Eyes for more inspiring and emotional stories that remind us what it means to love, to fight, and to heal. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs hope today, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter of human resilience and love. Together, we grow stronger through every story, through every struggle, through her eyes.